This is the weekend edition of Fear and Greed Business News, Australia's best business podcast. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Sean, I'm looking forward to this. I always look forward to the weekend edition. I would argue it is the most fun of our
Spiteful?
podcast.
Oh, no, fun, right? Yeah.
Spirited.
Yes, spiteful, spirited, fun. Everyone clearly takes something different from this podcast because it is very different to the weekday's show. Here we're looking for the biggest story of the week and the most remarkable story and the sleeper story, which is really one where we do a bit of detective work and figure out something that's going to become a bigger story further down the track, or one that's trying to kind of sneak through perhaps. And then our favourite story as well. It is highly, highly competitive. And I haven't had a good couple of weeks, Sean.
Well, I was going to ask that. I was away. So how'd you go the past couple of weeks, knowing full well what the results were?
Oh, look, I don't really remember. I try not to dwell on past results.
Yeah.
I kind of live for the now and also for the future.
2-0, I presume.
Look, let's ask the person who did the judging, the flawed judging. It is our adjudicator, our Fear and Greed colleague, Adam Lang. Good morning, Adam.
As a flawed person, I'm grateful to be here. Thank you, Michael.
Shall we jump straight in? And yes, Sean, in short, it was too it actually hurts to say. I didn't win any of the last two.
Now, I hope Jen's not listening, but sympathy vote from Adam, I'm guessing, Michael.
Look, I didn't want to say it. I'm glad someone did.
He's such a nice person, Adam. You know, get someone new on the show, he'll look after you, and he will. But he'll dump on you. Just keep that in mind. He'll dump on you, Michael.
Yep. Seriously, I feel like I'm the scapegoat here. I'm just kind of...
Well, Michael, I thought you could have brought more to the table.
Yeah, or maybe you just weren't good enough, one or the other.
I brought everything I have to the table. You know what? Forget last week. Forget the week before that. It is all about this week. The biggest story. Sean, what was it?
Michael, we're in the middle of earnings season. What do you think it was?
I tried this last week. It didn't work, so please go on.
This is where all the listed companies tell us how they performed over the past year. Very hard to go past that this week. Starting with the biggest of the lot, the big Australian BHP, Australia's largest company. It reported a slump in its underlying profit on the back of much lower commodity prices. Still managed a full-year profit of $21 billion. Not bad, really. Qantas, well, it had a record annual profit of $2.5 billion. It's about twice as much as what it made in the last normal year, which is 2019. Announced a $500 million buyback, great for shareholders. Not everyone's happy, though. Woolies announced a $3.1 billion pre-tax profit thanks to higher profit margins. Coles also had a higher profit. But what was really interesting about the retailers particularly was the amount of theft going on. It's a cost of living issue. People start stealing stuff. The Australian Retailers Association reckon that about 2 to 3% of turnover is now stolen, which I just thought was extraordinary. Wesfarmers' result came out. It really showed the benefits of diversification. Australia's largest car dealership, Eagers. Well, what I thought was interesting there, it's got a 22-month backlog of orders. Plenty of profits. South32, the diversified miner, suffered from lower commodity prices. Same deal from Santos. Nine Entertainment struggling with free-to-air TV. Stan's doing okay. Domino's Pizza, it announced a 74% drop in profit. Boss Don May said the group shouldn't have put up prices. Big issue there. Pizzas are losing market share to burgers. And I've just scratched the surface. I won't go on anymore. Massive week in terms of corporate earnings, Michael. How could anything be bigger than that?
Look, I mean, it's almost mathematically impossible to be larger than that because you combined 11 separate stories into one. I counted them.
And I also had a bunch of others as well, which you can throw in too.
Which we're not going to throw in. John, you know what I'm going to do? I'm actually just going to do what you're supposed to do here and just pick one story. And you cannot get bigger than this story. The government this week, the federal government, the Australian federal government released the intergenerational report. Now, this is big picture stuff, big projections, 40 years into the future, and not just that, the policy reforms needed to set Australia up for that future. So first, the key facts. Our economic growth rate is going to slow over coming decades. averaging about 2.2%. That's less than the 3% that we're kind of used to, largely due to an aging population. That's going to put a lot of pressure on spending. The tax base is going to erode. Climate change is going to cost the economy. This all sounds a little bit negative. I agree. But never let a good crisis go to waste, because all of these challenges that we're seeing coming for us into the future, they provide golden opportunities for reform. And the report sets out 8 reform priorities: budget discipline, transforming to a new net zero economy, developing a better trained workforce, deepening the industrial base, lifting investment, greater efficiency in markets, reforming things like the RBA and the Productivity Commission. As Sean, you made the point this week that it was a little bit undermined when the Treasurer ruled out wholesale tax reform, but that is, I would say in this particular case, just a minor detail. So why does this all matter so much? What is the just picking out one random thing, the economic significance per Adams criteria? Well, it sets out where we are heading. It gives business maybe not a lot of certainty necessarily, but at least it gives them a framework as to what to expect. And that is essential for planning, for investment, for growth. In launching this report this week, the Treasurer said that this decade could be a defining one for Australia. And if that is the case, then this week, this report are the beginning of all of that, and you cannot get much bigger than that. So you can take your 11 stories, Sean.
Shove them right where the sun don't shine, and off we go.
Indeed you can. Adam, please.
Okay, I can almost weep on 2 counts here. So first, to understand the reason why, the 5 criteria that we apply to the judging: topicality, timeliness, economic impact, subjective bias, and melodrama. Both of you scored very highly. The first set of weeping comes because, Michael, you ticked all 5 boxes. Perfect score. Second reason for weeping is directed to Treasurer Jim Chalmers, ruling out one of my, as you well know, both of you at pains sometimes, ruling out tax reform holistically. And that is, to me, so disappointing. Why rule out the GST review, Jim? Come on, be brave, have a go. So, Michael, perfect score. Well done. You win the first one of the week.
Okay, so the decision's made. I accept the decision. Can I have a gripe? Not at you,
Yeah.
Adam. Friggin' governments, right? So they come out and they say, we're going to give you 40 years of what the economic growth rate is going to be. We're going to have 40 years of budget deficits. They can't tell what next year's is. As if they've got any clue about 3, 5, 10, 40 years. I mean, how totally ridiculous. Then the government, Jim Chalmers talks about this, the 2020s being like the 1980s. Well, you got to do something, fellas. We had another announcement. We had another announcement this week about looking into things like the Productivity Commission and Reserve Bank. Well, it's going to be like the Productivity Commission, I think it was, a 2-year review. 2 years. Come on. That's as long as it takes for the Productivity Commission to come out with a report. I mean, and the world's moved on since then. I actually get really frustrated. This government needs, all governments, right? But governments need to have something that they'll be remembered by. And Hawke Keating did. In some ways, Howard was probably GST and gun control.
Gun buyback.
Yeah, so it's okay. And so far this government probably has in terms of the international stage, but that's just circumstances. Actually do something. Stop just making these big announcements.
So true, Sean.
Anyway, but I lost and I accept that I lost, but I just wanted to have a bit of a gripe generally.
Shall we move on to most remarkable?
Yes.
I'll go first on this one, if that's all right, Sean. And
Sure.
No melodrama in this one, because this is just no. Don't scoff. I've chosen a company reporting its results. I've chosen one company reporting its results, that is. In a week when, as Sean has pointed out, we were spoiled for choice on that front, I've chosen one that is truly remarkable, not just for the result itself, right, but for 2 other reasons. Number one, what it says about business post-COVID. And number two, the extremely fine line that a company has to walk sometimes between satisfying customers and satisfying shareholders. And so, of course, I'm talking about Qantas here. And you did allude to this, Sean, in your epic omnibus of a story before. Qantas announced that record annual profit of $2.5 billion this week. Shareholders, I would describe as stoked.
Oh, you should see them. They're running around stoked.
They are stoked to the max. And that I believe is fair enough, because this is the same airline that during the pandemic looked like it was about to run out of money. And you had outgoing CEO Alan Joyce this week describing it as a substantial turnaround, which is probably an understatement, I would say, to go from where they were just a few years ago to a record profit this year. That's not just remarkable. That is extraordinary. Yes, there was an awful lot of government assistance during the pandemic. But this result, and this is where it gets really interesting, this result largely comes off the back of very high demand and much higher airfares, much higher airfares. And that's irritated plenty of travellers who say the service does not justify the price. So on one hand, you've got demand now exceeding pre-COVID levels. So clearly we've shaken off those pandemic travel concerns well and truly. On the other hand, you've also got cancellations and delays at pre-COVID levels kind of as well, and more expensive flights, customers not happy, shareholders stoked, as we established before. A remarkable turnaround story, but a remarkable minefield now for the new CEO, the incoming CEO, to navigate. Remarkable overall. I've used the word remarkable.
Yeah, how many times?
1, 2,
12?
3. You know what? Yes, because this is remarkable. It is impossible to overuse the term remarkable.
Isn't it just business?
Sometimes business can be remarkable, Sean.
That's true.
Indeed.
That's true.
Look, what have you got? What's your offering?
Well, mine is truly remarkable because this...
The word's lost all meaning now, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has. It has. You know, fact is what's the fact is something than fiction? Fact is stranger than fiction.
Stranger than, yeah.
Yeah. So we've gone very John le Carre this week around the globe. Basically, earlier in the week, we heard that Beijing's investigating a Chinese national accused of spying for the US Central Intelligence Agency. Some 39-year-old Chinese national, his surname is Huao. He's a cadre at a ministry and had gone to Japan for studies. Apparently, he was recruited there. A couple of weeks ago, the ministry said it uncovered another national. Now, what I loved about this story is that Huao had become acquainted with a US embassy official known as Ted. Of course, his name was Ted. While sorting out a visa application, Ted invited the Chinese national for dinners, presented him gifts, sought his help with writing a paper that Ted promised to pay for. You know, apparently he was recruited as a spy. I thought that was pretty remarkable that sort of stuff went on. But it even got weird. The week got weirder because mercenary leader Yevgeny Prigozhin, who, remember, led a brief armed rebellion in Russia early this year, I think it lasted about 2 or 3 days, and then he pulled out. He was on a private jet, and it crashed north of Moscow. A bunch of his team were on the plane as well. Everyone seems to think that Russian President Vladimir Putin ordered the crash, so to speak. I don't know whether he ordered a crash, but did something to ensure that the plane crashed. For his part, Vlad paid tribute to Prigozhin before saying he'd made a few mistakes. US President Joe Biden said he just wasn't surprised the mercenary was dead. I just kind of thought this storytelling that you see in movies playing out in real life was absolutely remarkable. Adam.
Okay. Rare moments for me, gentlemen. Both remarkable, both very good. Curious beyond belief, the Beijing cadre and Yevgeny Prigozhin. But I have to say, Michael, you've overcome a couple of things here to win this category. And this puts you at 2-0 up, which I think is unprecedented territory. So the Qantas story for me is really vexing. And I know I've used that word before, but I think it is a good result for shareholders, but there's just so much dust around this. And there's so many conditions, from the support that the government's given them during the pandemic through to perhaps quizzical decisions by the government, including Qatar Airways. So, yes, they've had a terrific result, but I don't know that the long-term investor on behalf of all Australians and all travellers in this country is being looked after. So I've got a bit of a query over that one, but Michael, I think it is remarkable.
Why is it remarkable?
Because I said the word remarkable 8 times, Sean. I think
Because it's a record profit, and the scale of that profit is huge.
Look, I think we can, Sean, if you're a bit concerned about the way we're going, just remember that the sleeper story is up next.
Excellent. Something to look forward to.
And I have never won the sleeper story. I'm actually surprised to have. I've attempted to get Qantas stories off the ground many, many times before, and I rarely win those. So today's just a very rare day, I think.
Keep it up. Keep it up.
2-0. Okay, let's take a quick break. We'll come back with the sleeper story. All right, Sean, we are looking for the sleeper story of the week. So this is a story that's kind of flying under the radar a little bit, or maybe not getting the attention that we think it deserves. What was it for you this week?
Look, Michael, mine is pretty serious. The former boss of the corporate watchdog, ASIC, his name is James Shipton, he told this week how an abusive advertising campaign against him made him want to take his own life. Shipton said a 6-month abusive advertising campaign against him by a billionaire defendant, fairly clearly Clive Palmer, made him want to end his life. He said 43 prominent advertisements featuring eye-catching yellow backgrounds attacked his character, his competence and his integrity, and were published by a defendant charged with offences instigated by ASIC. Now, the advertisements, he said, were soul-destroying for me, my family, and my friends. They were relentless. They cut me to the core. He was talking in front of a parliamentary inquiry. He then went on to say something which I think is probably something we don't think a lot about, but it's really important that as a society we do pay more attention to it, and that's why, to me, this is a great sleeper story. He said, workplace bullying does not have to come from a superior or a peer. It can be perpetrated by an outsider. Moreover, workplace bullying can happen in the print and cyber media where it continues for eternity. I just think as a society, we should listen to this. This is a very top-level bureaucrat whom was ferociously attacked. He was bullied, in his words, and as a result, he thought about taking his own life. This is a really serious issue and something we should be paying a lot more attention to. Of course, anyone listening, if you need help, Lifeline's a great place to start, 13 11 14. That's quite a remarkable story this week. Very serious, though. Michael.
It is a serious one, and you're right, a very important one. So, look, it's a little bit hard to go from that to
something trivial that I'm sure you'll be giving us.
Well, it's not. No, it's not trivial.
Mm-hmm.
It's. Well, I suppose it is a little bit. It's the sleeper story category. It's my weak spot. But okay, I'm actually going to pick something a little out of left field, I suppose, for my sleeper story this week. Obviously, climate change isn't a sleeper story, right?
Yeah, go on.
Don't laugh. I'm going somewhere with this. I'm not.
I'm interested where we're going.
Yeah, I'm not going to suggest that climate change is a sleeper story. But what I'm putting to you today is that some of the economic impacts of climate change might be sleepers, and that we're only just starting to see some of those impacts now. I give you the Panama Canal.
Oh, that's a sleeper. Anyone heard of that before?
Allow me to enlighten you, Sean.
Please.
A few interesting facts, perhaps. Fact number 1. The Panama Canal links the Atlantic and the Pacific Oceans. Fact number 2. It takes 8 to 10 hours to traverse the canal. Fact number 3. It is 65 kilometres from shoreline to shoreline, or 82 kilometres from deep water in the Atlantic to deep water in the Pacific. And that is the key here, deep water. You see, water levels in the canal are getting a little bit problematic because climate change is affecting the water level. It's too low, and ships are having to either kind of to part load, essentially, just so that they can sit a bit higher in the water and get through. So there are delays, on average 4 days, some as many as 20 days. And that is hugely significant for the global economy, because the canal sees more than 500 million tons of cargo pass through every year. Slow that down, and I'm not exaggerating here. Slow that down, and the world's trade flows may just grind to a complete halt. No exaggeration, no melodrama. We're not talking about this. No one is talking about the Panama Canal. Every single person on the planet should be talking at work, talking at school, at night in bed about the Panama Canal right now, and they're not. So this is a sleeper story because it's not getting the attention that it deserves. I'm speaking up on behalf of canals everywhere.
Oh, dear.
Okay, so Sean, just like Michael had in the first round, perfect score. I cannot fault it. It is an incredibly important sleeper story. It is, and I like you, I think, and like many people reading it, listened to what James Shipton had to say and just thought quite deeply about what it meant about behaviour and how it can impact people. So I think that's an incredibly important sleeper story. Michael, Panama Canal, we've had a few stories in the last couple of years, including when that ship jammed sideways.
On the Suez Canal.
Oh, sorry.
See, this is what I mean. The Suez Canal.
It gets all the credit, doesn't it, the Suez Canal? Everyone talks about the Suez.
No, people need to be talking about all canals. There needs to be a lobby group for canals.
And wasn't in this story, wasn't the Amazon? There's trade issues with the Amazon in Brazil and the Rhine in Europe.
Look, all waterways, they need a champion, and I am willing to be the champion of the waterways.
I love seeing you in swimmers. Go on.
Michael.
Do I get any points for this, Adam?
You did. Yeah, on topicality, timeliness, you did. And economic impact, you fell down a little because I think mental health and the way we conduct ourselves has far broader impact across economic impact everywhere. Subjective bias fell down a little there. Melodrama, though, as usual, you brought it home.
Thank you. Okay, 2-1. Just trying to crack my knuckles into the microphone. Sometimes these things work, sometimes they don't.
To date, they haven't worked, Michael.
No, still nothing. Look, this category, the favourite story, this was always going to be about space, right?
Of course.
Of course it was. The moon has been around for a long time.
Go on.
But I reckon that this was one of its biggest weeks.
In the millennia that the moon has been around.
I mean, there was obviously a big week for it back in 1969, but not far behind it would be this week, right? Because somewhat bizarrely, the space race has started again, and the moon, of all things, is at the centre of it. Don't you think this is incredible? Because late in the week, we had India becoming the 4th country ever to land a spacecraft on the moon. They sent out a rover to explore, and it's all happening closer to the moon's, like the south pole of the moon, than any other spacecraft has ever gone. So it's very exciting. They are breaking new ground on the moon right now. And that, I find that tremendously interesting and enormously exciting. Earlier in the week, there was another mission to the moon, arguably a much less successful one. Russia had a spacecraft heading there, its first lunar mission in decades. It crashed, right? Just crashed straight into the surface of the moon. And this is where we get to the economic and political significance of all of this, Adam. The head of Russia's space agency said, this is not just about the prestige of the country and the achievement of some geopolitical goals. This is about ensuring defensive capabilities and achieving technological sovereignty. it is also listening, write this down. It is also of a practical value because, of course, the race for the development of the natural resources of the moon has begun. They are talking about moon mining here.
As opposed to moon landings. Go on.
Suddenly, the lunar rush makes a lot of sense. You got Japan about to launch a moon mission. China's been a few times. The US obviously did its Artemis mission not long ago. There's been private companies kind of all involved. Putting aside just for a moment the potential for exploitation of the moon's resources, it's just good to see the old girl getting some attention, don't you think? It's all happening. It's all happening.
I forgot to look at it for years now, but I will now.
It's all happening for the moon right now, and good on it, because everyone focuses these days on Mars, and I just don't think the moon gets enough credit. She's always up there. She's always doing her thing. Good on you, moon. This week's for you. Sean.
We love you, Moon.
Well, see, that no one says it anymore.
Well, look, I'm not conceding, absolutely not, but I'm kind of with you. I mean, good on the old girl, as you put it.
The old girl.
The old girl.
I don't know if that's disrespectful towards the moon.
Or towards the old girls out there. One or the other. But
The shining light that is the moon.
indeed. Anyway, look, I'll tell you my favourite story because it's much better than yours. I can't help myself. Donald Trump. Let's just leave it at that. Adam, over to you. No. First, the former US president skipped the presidential debate, the Republican presidential debate. Now, the whole idea of those debates is that the voters can hear what the candidates think and then decide who should be the Republican presidential nominee. He decided he wanted to be interviewed by conservative journalist Tucker Carlson, who's even too conservative for Fox. Trump came out and said he didn't want to be asked questions by people who shouldn't be running for president. Anyway, he then, later in the week, made his long-awaited return to X, or Twitter. And what it was, he posted his own mugshot on Friday, which was taken when he appeared at Fulton County Jail in Georgia. It is a great photo of the big fella. Now, Michael, who did you compare it to?
Yeah, Adam suggested that it resembles one of the Muppets.
The bald eagle.
The bald eagle from the Muppets. And you brought it up, Adam, on your screen, and oh dear, there's some truth to it.
It's pretty close.
Quite amazing. He's the first president ever to have his mugshot taken. There you go. Now, his first post back on X, all caps, of course, election interference, never surrender, followed by a link to a political fundraising page. He used to use Twitter all the time. He did it very successfully in the run to the 2016 election, which he won. He sometimes tweeted dozens of times a day at all hours to communicate directly with his followers. His account was closed in 2021 after Twitter said that some posts encouraged his supporters to storm the US Capitol on January 6th. Elon Musk purchased Twitter, of course. He reinstated Trump's account late last year. Trump has been using his own social media platform, Truth Social. Now he realizes he needs the oomph of Twitter. Just as an aside to or oomph of X, just as an aside to this, X itself is in all sorts of strife at the moment in terms of followers and people's view of it. I wonder whether Donald Trump jumping back on it will actually benefit or hurt it. Anyway, cracking story. My favourite for the week, Donald Trump. Adam.
Trump is back and Michael invokes the moon. This is good territory for the favourite story of the week. So, Michael, when we're looking at the moon and people are landing there or countries are landing there, do you think they're starting to kind of get this surveyor out and saying, which territory can we get? As this claims for resources of the moon, how do you divvy it up? Like, who spotted it first? Who landed
Absolutely.
first?
Well, I mean, and that's the thing that what the US has done is set up these the Artemis Accords, I think it's called, to try and kind of create these safe spaces on the moon. And
nothing like a safe space on the moon.
And the best part is, though, China and Russia have not agreed to those. So it's funnily enough. And so, it is a very real kind of concern and consideration as to essentially how do you How do you stake a claim on the moon?
So if we thought we had interesting global geopolitics now, imagine that expands to the moon. It gets another dimension, gets very interesting. So I think it's fascinating, really good story and close to my favorite. But for sheer gall and economic impact, I have to go with Trump. I have to go with Sean's story. Don't you think it has to be a contender for favorite? When Donald Trump himself recognizes that the American people seeing less of him is more. Even he's decided less of him is more. So he withdrew from the debate. I think it's just incredible. You in for favourite story of the week.
I stand with the moon. Let it be known that it's me and the moon against you two. And now, what was the so 2-2? Give us the points.
Yeah. Okay, very close. Michael, 89 points.
Oh, dear.
Sean, 92 points. Michael, once again, your second half.
No,
we really need to workshop
that. The moon should not have lost. Do you really want to go and offend something that has the potential to fall onto Earth? Oh.
Bit of collateral damage.
It certainly is. I just feel for the moon. Can't imagine how she must be feeling right now. Anyway, all right. Thank you very much, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Adam.
Thank you, Michael.
Make sure you're following the podcast and join us online on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was Fear and Greed Business News.
Oh, Michael, you just seem to have you've lost your pep.
Oh,
yeah. That was Fear and Greed Business News, weekend edition. It was a cracker. Have a great weekend.
I was going to say, and that was Fear and Greed, bit of a farce, business news. Have a great weekend. And I just thought it probably doesn't leave on the right note, does it? But you know what? I'm sticking with it. It was a farce.
Well, can I add one?
Yeah.
I'll add one from The Simpsons, one of my favourite episodes where they just cut to Star Trek 25 and the title of the movie is So Very Tired.
On that note, have a great weekend.